Somewhere in the middle of the ocean, a U.S. Navy fighter jet has just stopped flying after a sudden mechanical failure or critical loss of control. No runway nearby, no land in sight, just thousands of miles of open water beneath a machine worth over $60 million that is now falling out of the sky. In less than 2 seconds, the pilot is violently ejected from the cockpit by explosive charges built into the seat, a system designed to rip a human body away from a collapsing aircraft at supersonic speed and throw it into open air alone. From that moment, everything becomes a race against physics, gravity, and time. The parachute deploys, but the ocean below is not a safe landing zone. It is a hard, unpredictable surface that can injure or kill on impact. And even if the pilot survives the landing, they are now stranded in one of the most hostile environments on Earth, where hypothermia, exhaustion, and disorientation can set in within minutes. But here's what most people never realize. The crash is not the most dangerous part. What happens after hitting the ocean is where survival is actually decided, because the pilot must immediately activate survival systems, signal their exact location, and stay afloat long enough for a highly coordinated U.S. Navy combat search and rescue operation to begin moving across vast distances of ocean using helicopters, ships, and aircraft working together in real time. In the next few minutes, one of the most complex rescue operations on Earth will either locate and extract the pilot from a nearly invisible point in the open sea, or the ocean will quietly erase all trace of them. Now, before we go any further, take just 1 second to hit that like button and subscribe to Fleet Depth. Over 98% of viewers watch without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it gives us the motivation and bringing you more stories worth watching. Thank you. Let's start with the basics. Every U.S. Navy pilot knows one truth before ever stepping into a cockpit. Flying over the ocean is not like flying over land. There are no emergency landing strips, no nearby airports, no immediate rescue. Only vast, empty water, thousands of feet of it, cold, dark, and completely indifferent. Naval aviation is built on a fundamental truth that every pilot accepts before they ever strap into a cockpit. The ocean does not forgive mistakes. There are no emergency runways carved into open water, no nearby airfields or roadside help, only distance, depth, and silence. That's why the United States Navy spent decades engineering something remarkable, not just the aircraft, not just the weapons, but a complete survival architecture. A system designed to function under the worst possible conditions, in the worst possible place on Earth. But even the most sophisticated system in the world begins with a human being, alone, falling from the sky. It rarely happens without warning. A caution light, a pressure drop, a sudden loss of response in the controls. The pilot's first instinct is always the same: recover the aircraft, because ejection is never the first choice. It is always the last. Modern carrier-based fighters, like the F/A-18 Super Hornet and the F-35C, are built with layered redundancies specifically for this reason. Multiple backup systems, fail-safes designed to keep the aircraft flying even when primary systems collapse. But at low altitude, over open ocean, those redundancies have limits. And when they reach those limits, the decision arrives in an instant. Stay with the aircraft or leave it. There is no third option. When a pilot pulls the ejection handle, nothing happens gently. A controlled explosive charge detonates beneath the seat. In less than 2 seconds, the pilot is blasted clear of a $60 million aircraft with enough force to fracture vertebrae in an unhealthy ejection. They are now in the open sky. No cockpit, no instruments, no aircraft beneath them. Just altitude, velocity, and descent. The parachute deploys automatically, slowing the fall, but the ocean does not receive a parachuting pilot with mercy. At water impact, even with a chute deployed, the force is comparable to hitting concrete. The moment of entry is violent and disorienting. The cold hits immediately. And now, everything that was trained over hundreds of hours in a pool, in a simulator, and in controlled stress environments must happen instinctively. Harness releases, oxygen line disconnects, and survival kit straps cleared. One tangled line, one moment of hesitation, and the weight of the gear pulls a pilot beneath the surface before they've taken a single breath. Underwater, the world changes completely. Sound disappears, visibility collapses. There is no up or down, only pressure. The pilot has seconds to orient, surface, and begin functioning before cold shock begins robbing the body of muscle control. This is why Navy water survival training is not comfortable. It is not meant to be. Pilots are submerged in full gear, disoriented, spun, and forced to execute procedures under genuine physical stress, because the body will do in crisis only what it has done in training. And in the ocean, there is no room for the body to learn something new. Every naval aviator carries a survival ejection seat kit. It is not designed for comfort. It is designed for one purpose only: to keep a human being alive long enough to be found. Inside, an inflatable life raft, an emergency radio beacon, water purification tablets, signal flares, a flashlight, a basic first aid kit, and a survival knife. Stripped to the absolute essentials. The single most critical item in that kit is the emergency beacon, because in the middle of the ocean, location is everything. Without a beacon signal, the most advanced rescue network in the world has nothing to follow. The pilot becomes invisible, a single human being lost inside millions of square miles of open water. With it, they become a signal, a target, a mission. The moment an ejection is confirmed, something begins that most people never see. It is not a single rescue unit scrambling to respond. It is an entire network activating simultaneously. Aircraft carriers and nearby naval vessels redirect course. P-8 Poseidon Maritime Patrol aircraft are airborne within minutes. MH-60 Seahawk rescue helicopters are launched. Airborne radar systems begin narrowing the search grid. Satellite communication links triangulate the beacon. This is combat search and rescue. And its mission is precise: reach the pilot before the ocean does. In cold water, without a survival suit, a human body can lose the ability to swim within 36 minutes. Hypothermia doesn't announce itself. It arrives quietly, through fatigue, through confusion, through the slow shutdown of voluntary muscle control. This is why rescue helicopters are airborne in minutes, not hours. But while rescue is in motion, the pilot is still fighting, possibly injured from ejection, surrounded by debris, fuel, and the wreckage of their aircraft. Waves that looked manageable from altitude now rise above the pilot's head. Cold shock reduces grip strength. Disorientation sets in faster than expected. And beneath all of it is the most dangerous enemy in open water survival. Elite training exists specifically to override the instinct to panic, to replace it with methodical action, signal, conserve, stay calm, and stay visible. Because even trained naval aviators, some of the most physically capable human beings on Earth, are not immune to what open ocean does to the human mind. Now imagine being a Navy pilot stranded in the middle of the ocean, surrounded by endless water, battling powerful waves, darkness, exhaustion, and uncertainty, yet still fighting to survive. These men and women do not endure such risks for a paycheck alone. They do it out of duty, commitment, and a deep sense of service to their country. So if you have respect for the courage and sacrifice of military aviators, leave a comment below and share a few words of appreciation for those who willingly put themselves in harm's way to protect others. When the rescue helicopter arrives, the operation is not a pickup. It is a precision extraction under live conditions. In most cases, a rescue swimmer is deployed first, jumping into the same dangerous water in the same conditions to physically secure the pilot before hoist extraction begins. The pilot is raised by cable into the helicopter, often exhausted, sometimes unconscious, but alive. The ocean has been beaten. What makes naval aviation survival unique is not any single piece of technology. It is the architecture. The ejection seat, beacon, training protocols, rescue swimmers, and satellite links. The helicopters launched before anyone knows exactly where the pilot landed. Every component exists for one reason: to bring a pilot back alive from a place where survival, by every rational measure, should be impossible. And yet the ocean remains unpredictable. Weather shifts without warning. Equipment fails at the worst moment. Distance can exceed the range of even the fastest rescue assets. There are missions where the system is tested far beyond its design limits, and sometimes the system loses. But that is not the whole story. When a United States Navy pilot goes down over open ocean, it triggers one of the most complex emergency responses in modern military history. Thousands of moving parts, dozens of coordinated units, a network spanning sea, air, and space. At its core, however, it is not a military operation. It is something far more human. It is the refusal to leave someone behind. It is the belief, built into doctrine, into training, into hardware, that no pilot should ever be abandoned to the silence of the sea. Because in naval aviation, the mission does not end when the aircraft goes down. It ends only when the pilot comes home. If this story moved you, share it with someone who deserves to know. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned, because the next mission is already waiting.